Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, August 30th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about the United States congressional incumbents, the ones that are not running for re-election in their specific seat in 2022, and more specifically, about how the Republican Party is actually outpacing the Democrats, but not in a positive way, in terms of overall retirements from both the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives. Now, the reason why this is noteworthy is because with Joe Biden's approval rating deteriorating, many people are expecting that Democrats will soon announce that they are not running for re-election. But if there was that position for these Democrats looking at the 2022 midterms where they unequivocally thought that the election would be a red wave year, that they would have already retired, which pretty much reveals that many of these congressional Democrats do not believe that 2022 will be, undoubtedly at least, a red wave year. In addition, many of these Republicans might think 2022 might go in the opposite way that they would like. You can actually see that based off of the way that the Senate incumbents have chosen to retire and the potential retirements that they come from swing states, the states that would be closer in midterm years, which means that they had the possibility of losing re-election at that point. So you'll see here that amongst those retiring from the United States Senate, 0 Democrats have announced that they are retiring. We can actually take a look at the races that have retiring incumbents in 2022. That's Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Missouri, and Alabama, 2 of which are safe Republican seats. So the Republicans shouldn't have much to worry about there. Missouri might be if Eric Greitens is the nominee, but 9 times out of 10, even with him as the nominee, Republicans will win there. But then you have North Carolina, a state where Richard Burr, the incumbent, last won his election by over 5 points, now down to a lean margin by my metric, and was a lean margin in the 2020 election, going to Donald Trump by less than 2 points. In 2016, it went to him by over 3 points, a reduction in support from 2016 versus 2020. Taking a look at Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, by my most recent projection, which absolutely can change, especially with emerging events coming up that impact the American electorate, but both of those states with, Wisconsin, I don't know why I said this, Wisconsin does not have a retiring incumbent. I meant the state of Ohio, both Rust Belt states. Wisconsin, though, might have one, which is the reason why I confused it. Ron Johnson, as the incumbent there, has not announced that he's running for re-election. He's actually one of, I believe, 3 incumbents who have yet to announce whether or not they're running for re-election. It's Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, and Patrick Leahy in Vermont. Alaska has 2 Republicans running that will likely end up in the top 2 with the ranked choice voting. We don't talk much about that. State of Vermont, Patrick Leahy is in a safe Democratic seat. No matter who's the nominee, the Democrat will absolutely win there. So Wisconsin, I apologize for a brief minute there for thinking otherwise, but a lot of speculation about Ron Johnson. But the other incumbent not running is in the state of Ohio. Now, Ohio is actually closer than it has been in the past. I'm not trying to say that, this is a state where Democrats will absolutely win and that this, if is going to put them in a very competitive position, but I will say that the retirement certainly helps the Democrats in the regard that Rob Portman will last won this election by over 20 points, and in 2022, Republicans will likely win it between anywhere of 5 and 15%. But the Republican Party in the United States Senate outpaces the Democrats 5-0 in terms of retiring incumbents. The last time we actually had retirement in the midterm elections were, of course, 2018, and Democrats took advantage of that. For instance, in the state of, let's say, the state of Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema, as the non-incumbent there, a representative at the time, defeated another representative, you might recognize her name, Martha McSally, who ended up being the appointed senator in 2019 to replace the late John McCain. But that's besides the point. In the state of Arizona, because of these retiring incumbents, Jeff Flake in this seat, it overturned party hands in favor of Kyrsten Sinema, in favor of the Democratic Party by 2.4%. Taking a look at Tennessee, that is a state where Marsha Blackburn took over. She is another United States representative. She won that nomination, but it was an open race, and Marsha Blackburn only won by around 11 points in the state of Tennessee. And I mean, it's Tennessee. It's 11 electoral votes and an 11-point margin of victory. All around, though, just looking at the state itself, it's a very solid one. An 11-point margin of victory for a state that Donald Trump won by nearly 30 in 2016 and 2020 is not necessarily something that you would see as a benefit pretty much at all. In the state of Mississippi, there was a race here in which there was a special election. Now, it was not a retirement. This was a forcefully vacated seat in which Cindy Hyde-Smith was the appointed incumbent, but she only won by 6.8%. The state of Mississippi went to Donald Trump by nearly 20 points in 2016 and by a similar margin to to Donald Trump over Joe Biden in 2020 as well. So looking at many of these open races, they usually indicate that these races will get closer, and Democrats are going to benefit from that. If you take a look at the U.S. House members that have announced that they are retiring, I remember that Ron Kind said that he's retiring from public office and will likely not be seeking any type of seat. There is speculation about him running for Senate, but chances are he probably will not. But that are 8 Democrats and 8 Republicans who have announced that they are not seeking re-election, practically tied there for both parties. In addition, you take a look at the incumbents retiring from public office in its entirety, Democrats actually only have 4 and Republicans have 2. While Democrats, of course, are above Republicans by 2, in its entirety, you would add 2 to the Republicans, which put them at 7, and Democrats are just at 4. For reference, back in 2018, the number of retirements was actually very, very long. We can actually see here the way that it was tracked in 2020, and also looking at 2018. Taking a look at this is a map actually written for 2018. We can look at 2020 in just a moment, but to just say 2020 was a year that it's really conflicted about how I personally believe the year should be described. It's not a blue wave, but Democrats did win a trifecta after losing a trifecta in 2016, or not losing it, but losing to a Republican trifecta. It's very weird to make that distinction. But you can see here that these retirements here, just take a look. Every time you see a red background, that is a retirement for an incumbent Republican, and a blue background is for the Democrats. So you can see here red in the United States Senate, red in Senate Democrats. They only have 1. Tom Udall from New Mexico ended up going to the Democratic Party, of course, in 2018. Then you take a look at 2020. This is essentially the competitive races for 2020. I don't know why I thought it was 2018. I have to show you 2018. I got completely rewired here. I don't know why. I saw Lamar Alexander and I was like, that was not the race. That was, whatever. Besides that point, you can see here that all of these are Republican retirements, most of them at least. You can see here that a lot more red than there is blue. A lot more red than there is blue. You're going through the red. You're going through the red. You're going through the red. There are, of course, Democrats are retiring from the United States House of Representatives, but you can see here that maybe 8, 9, 10 Democrats and a lot more Republicans. A lot more Republicans. Now, in 2020, Democrats didn't exactly have that position where I would say they were deafening margins over Republicans by any standard. In fact, Republicans did very well in 2020 in terms of the congressional races. But it was maybe an indicator that the fact that the results here actually showed that Democrats were able to hold on to the House, hold on to the Senate, and pretty much expand in the presidential margin based off of 2016 for obvious reasons. I mean, obviously, Donald Trump won in 2016. Democrats did in 2020. But just looking at the retirement tracker here, it was very much an indicator of, what is happening in this race, what actually happened, and ended up being the final result. Of course, it did not indicate a blue wave year when it came down to pickups or gains by any metric, really, in terms of the United States House, maybe technically the United States Senate, but many more opportunities than wins for Democrats in 2020. But just looking at it in its entirety, it might have been an indicator that was worth noting. In 2018, this is where we get into it. You can actually see here, I don't know what's happening here with the Wi-Fi. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page. Normally it shows you red and blue. There it is. Thankfully, it's back. But you can see here that if you go ahead and look at the incumbents who retired from public office, in the United States Senate, it was all Republicans, 0 Democrats. In the United States House, it was 23 Republicans who retired from public office entirely and 10 Democrats who did as well. In terms of the 52 total ones that retired, 34 Republicans and 18 Democrats. Republicans outpaced Democrats in the House and the Senate. Right now, Democrats technically outpace the Republicans or would be tied depending on what you use as the standard there. But in its entirety, pretty much overall at least, the Republicans are outpacing Democrats in terms of retirements. And that should be worrisome because for an election that is widely regarded as an election that is going to be a red wave year by members of the Republican Party, you have Rick Scott coming out to the mainstream media promising to win key battleground states, saying without a doubt Republicans will hold on to Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. They will pick up Georgia. They will pick up Arizona. They will pick up Nevada. They will pick up New Hampshire. He said all 4 of those states that were held by Democrats, that absolutely, unequivocally, they will go to the GOP and that they are targeting them heavily. In fact, in addition to these 2 states, the Republican Party is prioritizing states such as Illinois and Colorado because of their recent competitive nature. But obviously it doesn't make sense. Illinois went to Biden by over 15 points. Colorado was nearly there, a 14-point margin of victory for Biden over Trump in that state. So when you look here, you're looking at the Senate results. You're looking at the Senate projections for 2022, Republicans may seem very ambitious when it comes down to this race. But when it comes to overall political power, when it comes down to those who are worried enough to retire, it seems a little bit that the Republican Party might be slightly more worried about this race. 5 incumbents retiring from the United States Senate is unheard of. You see, it is something to note because the incumbency advantage matters a lot, especially in swing states. For instance, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, states that are always contested on the presidential level. These 3 Republicans won by okay margins, all outran Donald Trump in 2016 on the same ballot. So they would have offered some type of crossover support, especially in states such as Pennsylvania, where Biden may have won by 1.2%, but there was enough of that crossover support that Pat Toomey would have been able to win re-election. But instead of running for re-election and allowing voters to decide again if they want to keep them in office, they instead are now turning to the chase of retirement. And it makes sense for your legacy. You saying you left on your own terms rather than being kicked out by the voters is more of an elegant way to go. It's more of a way to reflect on your journey in the Senate, and by, final result, you would be out in either way. In terms of Richard Shelby in Alabama, he's been serving for a very long time. He actually served as a Democrat from Alabama through the 90s and then ended up switching political parties. But you'll see here that, Richard Shelby's been in there a long time. Roy Blunt in 2016, he faced off against a very competitive race against Jason Kander, a statewide official in the state of Missouri, who lost by just 2.8% as a Democrat on the same ballot that Donald Trump won by over 15 points. So Missouri, while sure has a pretty solid Republican history, Roy Blunt might have been a little bit scared for 2022, potentially with the Democratic challenger, announced that he was going to be retiring on March 8th, 2021. When it comes down to the House elections, not many major House election retirements from the Republican Party, but for the Democrats here, you actually do have some. You have Ron Kind from the state of Wisconsin, who is a more moderate member, in fact, represents a Trump district, and his retirement was supposed to continue many, many more, but so far we haven't seen anyone really go to this as their next go-to. In the state of Arizona, we don't know how the districts are going to be drawn, but Ann Kirkpatrick represents a district that was competitive in the past, not so much in 2018, then was again in 2020. She's deciding to retire from public office. But all in all, what you see here is that these Democrats and Republicans in 2022 are either even in the House of Representatives, but in the total count are behind. The Democrats are behind the Republican Party in terms of total retirements across the United States congressional system. And that is fascinating to see, because in 2018, that was not the case. In 2016 even, you could find that it was an election which you might have been able to detect by the retirements. 2014, 2010, Democrats at least were retiring in the United States Senate, but today there are 0. In 2018, there were 0. In 2020, you take a look at that election, there was only 1. Minimal Democratic retirements might be indicators that Democrats tend to do well, because incumbents never want to lose. You never want to be a representative or a senator going back to your constituents and say, I understand you've kicked me out, so I will leave. And obviously, that's what you do, but you would never want that to be the case. If you can make that predetermination a year and a half out before the election that you are going to be retiring from the United States Senate, from everyone's point of view, it seems as if you are leaving on your own terms rather than being afraid of losing. For the case of 2022, do I think that some of these incumbents think that they're going to lose in 2022? I do think so. But I also do want to say that there is no guarantee that they were going to lose. There's also no guarantee as to which one could be thinking like that, or maybe they just want more time with their family, or maybe they're done with electoral politics. That could very well be a case for many of these senators, many of these representatives that are looking to leave and vacate that office for, of course, their incumbent party, but thus making it a competitive race. I just think that it is quite fascinating, especially in a year where you are expecting the Republican Party to at least improve off their 2020 margins when it comes down to the Senate elections, when it comes down to the House elections. The House, more than anything, that is the first step at changing in terms of party control in the upcoming presidential election for 2020. Based off 2018, any political pundit could have told you that a Democrat was going to win in the 2020 election based off 2018, and that's exactly what happened. But it's not a perfect science. Probably someone would have told you after the 2010 midterms that Obama was done for, his approval rating was in the gutter, that he was losing 60 House seats for the Democratic Party, went from a high to a low practically overnight, right? And you would see that argument being made, but it was wrong in 2012. It was right in 2016, it was right in 2020, but sometimes it's off. which is another thing that we should proceed with caution looking at these midterm elections. And another reason why many Republicans might be proceeding with caution as well. We don't know how this midterm is going to go. We don't have any type of indication from the generic ballot that indicates that Republicans are going to have a wave year or that Democrats are going to have a wave year. Some say Democrats are up 5, 7, 8 points at a high point. Others say up 10 points. One says +3. One says down by 1. It depends on where you look, but there are no clear consistencies in terms of the polling data like there was in 2020, like there was in 2018, even in 2016, when it predicted a pretty close race overall across the national environment. So what I see here with these near equal retirements in the House of Representatives, an actual 5 retirements for Republican senators and 0 for Democrats, that congressional retirements are not good indicators right now about the direction of this midterm election. But if it is, the Democratic Party should be very happy about where they stand today. Retirements can tell you who is afraid and who is not afraid. Even if the promises were made early on, the same way Ron Johnson did, you could walk back on it and leave open speculation. But if you are looking at it from perspectives of insiders, these senators, these representatives have campaign teams that survey their districts, that survey their redistricting committees, that survey their states. And if they personally know on the inside, in their campaign, in their congressional office, that they will not win re-election, they will save themselves the humiliation and choose to retire. And right now, it seems that more Republicans are seemingly afraid of 2022 than Democrats, at least at this point in time. But that is 100% entirely subject to change. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.